1. A little over a year ago, my ex-fiancée, 18 female at the time, proposed to me, 19 and male at the time. This was while we worked at the same company. Eventually, I quit, as I was about to get fired because I needed to leave work early to take care of her, as she had gotten types A and B flu. I then started job hopping every couple of months, but during that time, she met a guy, 30, at work, and started hanging out with him in the work parking lot after each shift. I know this because her mom had Life 360, and I would ask her to check her location to make sure she was okay. I started to get suspicious that something was going on, but I never said anything, because I didn't want to be that controlling boyfriend, or fiancé, a lot of people have. But one night she asked if I minded him coming over, and I said I didn't care. But since I didn't like the guy, I decided to go on a walk for a little over an hour. When I got back, I noticed the bedroom door was locked, so I knocked on it. She came out completely nude with him in there with her. I dropped the spare house keys on the floor and went to the game room so I could cry in peace, but she was able to unlock the door since it was a coin lock. When she came in, she was still butt naked and was trying to console me, saying that she didn't cheat. She eventually left the room to go back to him for the night, and the next day after he left, she broke up with me and gave me 2 weeks to move out. 1 week later, a few hours after I woke up, I drove her to work as I needed to borrow her car. Hers was the only one we had. And a few hours after I got back home, cops showed up at the door and said that an EPO, basically a restraining order, had been filed on me citing assault, sexual assault, and harassment. They ended up taking me to my grandmother's house after I grabbed some essentials. Court comes and I say no contest as I didn't want anything to drag on, and a detective comes by saying that I'm not getting charged with anything, as there is no evidence of me doing anything to her, and that was when I found out that she had a rape test kit done. Fast forward about 7 months, and I got an old laptop I had and I realized that she was still logged in on it with her YouTube and Google accounts. She had some videos on YouTube of some of her now dead cats. Needless to say, I decided to finally get a bit of revenge for attempting to ruin my life. I deleted each video of her cats, and deleted all her liked videos, and unsubscribed to all the YouTubers she had on there. I also messed with the language settings on her Google account, and put it to a language that is very rare for people where we live to speak. I also deleted her favorite music playlist. She ended up marrying the dude she cheated on me with 3 months after everything happened, but I don't think she has ever noticed the videos missing, because she never posted anything on here or other apps I know she has. Hellfreezer's note. Well, it's absolutely terrible what happened to you, and although it was small, I hope it gave you some degree of satisfaction to get your revenge. I think it's possible she did notice and she's just choosing not to say anything. As for the idiot that she left you for, well, if she did that to you and treated you that way, why does he think he's immune? Because he's most certainly not. And he'll probably get his in the end, I'm sure. 2. A year ago in high school, I mostly kept to myself and hung out with my small circle of friends. Life was simple, until a few girls decided to turn my world upside down. Out of nowhere, they started spreading a rumor that I had been taking pictures of their butts without their consent. It was utterly false and came out of nowhere, but it spread like wildfire. I did have a photography camera, but I definitely did not take pictures of them without their permission. The worst part was how quickly everyone believed them. Over a few days, I became the school pariah. People would whisper behind my back, glare at me in the hallways. And even teachers started looking at me differently. I had to constantly defend myself against something I never did, and it felt like my word meant nothing against theirs. The principal even had to check my camera and my phone camera, but found nothing. Yet people still falsely accused me of this. That year was hell for me. Fast forward to this year, and I was still feeling the sting of those accusations. Even though I managed to avoid any serious consequences, the social damage was done. But then, I got a little piece of information that would set the stage for my revenge. Their phone numbers. One night I was talking with my friends, and in a fit of frustration, I mentioned how I still hadn't gotten over what they did to me. One of my friends, who was good with tech and a bit of a prankster, casually suggested signing them up for spam as a way to get back. It was like a light bulb went off in my head. So over the next hour, I meticulously signed them up for every possible mailing list and website I could find. Political campaigns, check. Scientology, check. Health and life insurance quotes, double check. Solar panel installations, military recruitment for the Army, Marines, and Navy, check, check, check. My dad's friend signed up for a political website a few years ago, and he's still getting calls every single day from Washington, D.C., so I can't imagine how many phone calls they would get. I also heard health insurance websites call you 30 to 70 times a day. There are also many different people calling, so it would be impossible to block all of them. They're especially going to get a lot of calls from the political campaign since it is election year. But the crowning jewel, I put up a Craigslist ad using their phone numbers, saying they were looking for some midnight companionship, and to call after 12 a.m. The thought of them being bombarded with calls and texts in the middle of the night brought a wicked grin to my face. It didn't take long for the results to start showing. I overheard they were spammed non-stop with calls and messages from various places, and how their phones were blowing up at all hours. Of course, they had no idea who did it. They might have to get a new phone number. I never told anyone it was me. Watching them scramble to control the chaos was enough. I don't feel bad for it. Petty revenge. I know. 3. It's the 1990s. Cell phones were barely a thing. Amazon was just thought of as a bookstore. And it is the middle of summer in Minneapolis, Minnesota. I promise there is a specific reason why I mentioned the location, just bear with me. My sister and I were teenagers and out for the summer. Just for some context, we never got along. We always fought tooth and nail, literally. I still have bite marks on my face, and she still has claw marks on her arm. We'd pull hair, spit on each other, bite, scratch, and once we pushed each other down the stairs. It was brutal. My sister was and still is a Karen, well before Karens were a thing. Anything would set her off. She expected us to just know the disrespectful thing we did to her, without telling us what it was she thought was so disrespectful. Case in point. She stopped speaking to my brother for decades because he had the audacity to announce his wife was pregnant at a family event. I think it was either Christmas or Thanksgiving. Why? Because she believed he did it on purpose, knowing that she was trying to have a baby with her husband and that they were having problems. Now, my sister is a very private person. She had told no one about her issues at all. We only found out years later after she just stopped talking to him. That's my sister. Back to the story. On this sunny summer day, my sister and I got into a nasty fight. We were screaming, pulling hair, pushing and shoving each other. It was bad. To this day, I have no idea what started it, or even what we were fighting about. It's irrelevant. I'm not a fighter. I hated fighting with my sister. But it was either that or let her walk all over me. I'm too stubborn to let that happen. My brother wasn't home, my mother was at work, and this was getting out of hand, so I did the grown-up thing, grabbed what I could, my purse, my shoes, and left the house. My hair was a mess. I didn't brush my teeth or put on socks. I forgot my glasses on the table, but I knew where I was going. I was heading to the one place I could lose myself in, the downtown public library. The one thing my sister and I have in common is we both love to read. While my sister was into Sweet Valley High and Flowers in the Attic, I was into non-fiction and psychology books. The Study of the Mind and Stephen King. So that's where I find myself, the non-fiction section, staring at covers, wishing I had not forgotten my glasses so I can escape just for a little while. That's when things got weird. I left the aisle to go down another aisle when I noticed there were a lot of people in the library. A lot of people isn't really that unusual, but usually it's individuals here and there. Every once in a while you'll see a group of people, but that's rare. This day, however, people were in groups of 3 or 4, and there were dozens of groups, some standing, some sitting, but all looking periodically in the same general direction. I observed this for a while. They would look, quickly look away, whisper quietly, smile, then look again. This was odd, but not surprising. There's a term people use, Minnesota nice. People there will go out of their way to be super nice and not say something for fear of embarrassment. So I walk up to someone and asked, "What's going on?" The man I asked leans down and whispers in my ear, "Keanu Reeves is in the Shakespeare section." "No, he's not," was my first thought. But he was serious. The next thought was that some poor sap who coincidentally so happens to look like him decided to read Shakespeare and drew a crowd. Why would a famous actor come here of all places? "What light through yonder window breaks?" Whoa. There's nothing here. The only celebrities that ever come here are Prince and sports people. That's when I decided to figure this out myself. I walked over and saw him sitting on the floor browsing the books. I said, "Hey." He turned and looked at me and said, "Hey," back. That is when I knew he was the real deal. Keanu Reeves sitting right in front of me talking to me. I immediately sat down and asked him what he was doing. We had a decent conversation. He said he was in town filming a movie called Feeling Minnesota. On his off time, he was studying Shakespeare because he wanted to do more roles in that genre. After my conversation with Keanu Reeves, I promptly left the library. I wished I could remember everything that was said, but it's lost to time now. But I still remember the look on my sister's face when I said to her, "Hey sis, thank you so much for fighting with me today. It meant a lot to me. If we hadn't fought, I wouldn't have left, and I would never have met Keanu Reeves. Best day ever!" Or something like that, and then I ran to my room. I think I won that fight. Best day ever. 4. So I'm a builder. I primarily do high-end custom homes, 1 to 4 million price range. I'm female, 34, which isn't common in this industry. The female part, not the 34. I assume there are other 34-year-olds. But I really love what I do, and I'm fairly decent at what I do. In the past, my projects were primarily in rural areas, on large ranches. But this particular project is in the middle of a large city, which means there are neighbors in close proximity, which is something new for me to deal with. The neighbors around this area are some of the worst, entitled, nastiest people you can imagine. And one of them is a celebrity and his wife. We'll call her Bunty, who is also well known. I haven't personally had too much interaction with the couple. When Bunty goes walking every morning, I smiled and waved, "Hello," which I do with everyone because this is Texas, y'all. And she would always ignore me, which honestly is whatever. I'm not going to stop being kind because she is unfriendly. I honestly just started ignoring her. My job site has been really busy the last year, and most of my subs park along the side of the street in front of the house. We all park on one side facing the proper flow of traffic. If someone happens to park on the other side of the street, the neighbors call the cops or the city building official. I find this incredibly annoying and childish, but whatever. I have my guys move and it's not a big deal. That being said, I stop by my project every morning to line my guys out and check on what work has been done, make my lists, etc. Most of the time, I park on the very right side of Bunty's property, which is just to the left of my project's construction drive, so my guys have parking in front of the project house. I am not there long, usually 2 or 3 hours. One day I was outside the house and a woman approached me. I wasn't sure who she was, but apparently it was Bunty's maid. She informed me I need to move my car, which was on the correct side of the public street, or Bunty was going to call the cops. I looked at her and said there was nothing wrong with me parking there. The maid then proceeded to tell me that Bunty was going to charge me $500 a day for parking in front of her house. I laughed and told the maid I didn't know they were that hard up, that they needed to charge a parking fee for using the public street. I went ahead and called the police to get ahead of the situation. He informed me there wasn't anything she could do about me parking in front of her property, which I knew, but I could get a ticket for parking within 15 feet of a fire hydrant, which is on the property line between my project and her house. The officer informed me I needed to be over 15 feet away from the hydrant. I thanked him and he left. So, I did end up moving my car. I took my measuring tape and measured out 15 feet, which put me almost smack in front of Bunty's house. I decided to park in front of her front sidewalk for 2 weeks after that. Every time she does something rude to me on the street, which happens more than I prefer, I park in front of her house just to annoy her. Honestly, if she had just come to me in the beginning and asked me nicely not to park in front of her house, I probably never would have again unless absolutely necessary. But the fact that she was okay sending her help to threaten me really annoyed me. Am I wrong for keeping this going? I don't like when people think they're above you because they're well off. I know billionaires that have better manners than this chick. Hellfreezer's note. You've got to park somewhere, and I don't see the harm in legally parking where you are, very much legally parking. So no, I don't think you're wrong to keep doing this. It's up to her if she has a problem with it. 5. Setup. This happened while I was in middle school at a certain math tournament called Math Battle. To tell this story, I need to first explain the rules. I'll try to do this as briefly as possible. The rules are similar to other math tournaments with 2 main features. First, it's a team competition and every battle goes between 2 teams. Second, every solution has to be presented by a speaker and refuted by an opponent from the other team. To get points as a speaker, you present your solution. To get them as an opponent, you refute the correctness of the speaker's points by spotting mistakes in their solution and getting points for these mistakes instead of the speaker. When the speaker is done presenting, they have to say, "Presentation over." This is to avoid any confusion and interruption from the opponent, as any mistake noted before these words can be spotted by the speaker and fixed on the spot, thus giving no points to the opponent. Overall, the point distribution is managed by the judge. Story. As this is a team competition, there are rules that prohibit players from being in the same role more than twice. Because of this, our captain decided to delegate presentation of the extra problem they solved to me. They explained the solution to me, I got about half of that, and set me on my way to the blackboard. In this state, the solution barely holds, and the opponent sees that. When I start making mistakes, they interrupt my presentation to point that out. As I'm aware of the rules, I try to notify them. Please save your questions for after the presentation is over. This helps a bit, though only a bit. The second I misplace a digit, I hear another correction. Please save your questions for after the presentation is over. At one point it becomes really irritating, as it's hard to present a solution when you barely understand it and there is someone constantly noticing the mistakes. When I'm almost done presenting the solution, now as full of holes as Swiss cheese, I take about 3 seconds to catch my breath and try to say presentation over, when at that perfect moment, when I open my mouth, they interrupt me again. Cue malicious compliance. Instead of finishing what I tried to say, separating the section when speaker gets points from the section when opponent gets points, I decided to stand back and watch. The opponent obliterates my solution, telling why it does not work and the way it should have been solved. Instead of arguing, I simply say, "You are right, that's how you're supposed to do it, thank you." And when they're done, they indicate the end of their rebuttal by saying, "I agree with the solution to the problem after corrections made," at which point I interrupt them with, "Oh yeah, presentation over. You may ask your questions now." Not getting what I was implying, the opponent finished their rebuttal and returned to their team. Now is the time the judge distributes the points. Okay, the corrections made by opposition are significant, thus worth... I'm sorry, but all the corrections from opposition were made during the presentation. There is a brief silence in the room. Oh, you're right. All points go to the speaker. The most precious moments were when we heard the captain of the other team scolding my opponent for their impatience. We won that battle, sadly, not thanks to that maneuver, though that was the highlight of the game. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream. episode 360. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. Before you go, please hit the like button and share the video with friends and family. And if you want to get the videos early, you get them all on a Monday at once. Support me on my Patreon page, which is linked for you in the description. Support me there for as little as $1 or more a month. You'll also find links to the Hellfreezer Discord server, as well as a Hellfreezer merchandise store on Teespring. And if you really enjoyed today's video, you can leave a tip by clicking on the heart with a $sign underneath the video. You don't have to do that or any of that, but I very much appreciate it, and it helps me keep the lights on around here. Okay. No other bits and bobs today, so let's move right along to Hellfreezer's question of the day. And today's question is: what is the most annoying twist you've ever come across in a piece of fiction? It could be anything, a book, even a song, a video game, a movie. Mine is actually a television show. And the twist, and I think most Star Trek fans will agree with this, was the Enterprise finale essentially being a holodeck episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. While it's always nice to see Jonathan Frakes and Marina Sirtis, it was always nice to get a little bit of a glimpse of the Enterprise D. I love that D. But it also felt unneeded and rude to essentially take the finale of that cast away from them. I know everyone involved, including Scott Bakula, felt the same. Which is saying something, because apparently he's like one of the nicest men in showbiz, so it takes a lot to make him angry. Anyway, that's mine, so why don't you let me know what some of yours are in a comment below. Speaking of comments, let's have the answer of the day from a previous video. And this was about the sun rising in the east and setting in the west, and whether or not you'd have the sunrise. And today's answer comes from Avery Satos. Well, the sun somehow sets over the water on the east coast just fine. And this question hurts my soul. Thank you very much for your answer, Avery Satos. And with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.